Hello everybody, and welcome to another update video from me. My name is Martin. I'm an Inkscape developer developing Inkscape features and fixes on behalf of users. Thank you for joining me this week for week 7 of the Connectors Tool Improvement project. It's turning into a long one, folks. So last week I told you that I basically had a couple more jobs to do to clean up, putting back the graphing tools, putting the avoidance functionality back in, and basically some cleanup like snapping. I also found an issue with slowdowns, which I fixed. The good news is that all is resolved. I managed to do all those jobs, and that's looking quite nice. The bad news is that when the client reviewed last week's version of the feature, there were some major issues that were left to be resolved. Firstly, the directionality of connectors. The router wasn't behaving well with the sides of connectors. They would basically come out at all angles. Secondly was the inconsistent directionality of checkpoints themselves. So as the router was routing lines through points on the page, it couldn't tell whether it was supposed to be routing them horizontally or vertically. And so if they started out horizontal, they might flip to being vertical at any time as you drag them around. This obviously creates instability and makes it much harder to understand what it is that you're editing. So the client wanted me to look again at how the routing system works and how it's possible to encode directionality. You'll probably remember from week 1 when we did, like I looked at libavoid, right? I hit the library box, as they would say. And I read all the instructions for like how to encode the directionality. It should go left, it should go right, it should go up or down. But nothing happened, right? It didn't actually do anything. It turns out that you not only need to give it instructions for directionality, you also have to weight those instructions. And the Inkscape's default configuration for routing is very basic and clumsy. So I had to read into all of the weightings and add some weight to the directionality. What I also did, though, is I wanted to give users some more control over what those weightings are. And so I put them all into the preferences. So if you go into the connectors preferences, you'll actually find each of the weightings. They're not all in use right now, but I figured I'd just put them all in there and users can just play with them and then feedback, tell me what they think and what they're using for their particular kind of work. I'm not entirely sure that the weightings that I have right now are actually good defaults. But I'm not a domain expert well enough to know what the right defaults should look like. So hopefully users will actually step in and be able to help that. So what did the directionality functionality look like? The first thing is like, how do you get points on the edges of objects like rectangles to come out at the right angle? To do that is just a basic calculation of saying, okay, if this point is nearer the left, then tell the router that the line should come out of the left. Same for all the other directions. But I did want to make it configurable, so I made it so that the actual connector point itself could encode a preferred direction if it wanted one. So the user could tell the router specifically whether they wanted it to come up or down or left or right, even if it was on one particular side of the object or not. This might be useful later on for when you're creating symbols and you want to be able to control the directionality of the custom points that you make. Secondly was the checkpoints themselves, right? So in this particular case, horizontal or vertical. To do that, what I did is I wanted to make sure that when you draw the line initially, I don't give it any instructions for the checkpoints. So I tell the router this could be horizontal or vertical. It doesn't matter. And then once it's been drawn, once the route line is settled, that's when I tighten the restrictions and I say, okay, so the router has decided that this checkpoint is a horizontal line. I'm now going to tell it now for the future, if that checkpoint gets moved, it's going to continue to be horizontal. To actually encode it, what I did was I put the instructions for whether the line should be horizontal or vertical into the Beziers for the curves. Before, the original lines were just straight, so it was just from the origin to all of the checkpoints in straight lines and then to the destination. But in order to encode directionality, I actually need more information about what the router needs to know. So the Bezier handles, when they stick out horizontally, that gives the router the instruction that the checkpoint should be handled as a horizontal route. The same for the vertical, if the Bezier is to stick out vertically. And in fact, if you disable the live path effect once you've created a route, you can actually see the changes in the lines. And notice that the way in which they sometimes will curve weirdly because of it's trying to, they're basically instructions for the router, not necessarily instructions to draw a line. But they are interesting, the way I've tried to encode it in that original line anyway. I didn't want like a massive long list of attributes that say, oh, point A has, horizontal, checkpoint B has vertical, in some like custom thing. I wanted it to be like encoded in the way that line was drawn, but we'll see. Other programmers are probably going to review that and see if that's a reasonable solution. So once I had the router set up with correct weightings, and once I had the router set up with instructions for the directionality of things, the stability of these lines has increased a lot. You can actually tell as you use it and you drag lines around. It took a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of work this week. It was a lot harder of a week than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be clean up, but it turned out that there was just large amounts of functionality that was still left to do. But I'm hopeful that that's all cleaned up now. I'm going to be taking next week off, but I want you to stay subscribed because I'll be posting a video showcasing all of the fantastic work going on in our Inkscape Outreachy, our Inkscape Google Summer of Code students, and also the other regular developers for Inkscape who are all doing amazing work. And I want to give them the spotlight next week. So please come back, join me as we walk through some of the exciting functionality being developed this year. And thank you for joining me this week. Please subscribe and share these videos, and thank you all very much for watching.